Athena, you're muted.
I am muted. I've just been going for the last thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, let's try that again. Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today for our September meeting. Um, Here, let me back up. Our agenda today is going to be same format as we typically follow. We'll start with announcements. Last month we did highlight or we talked a little bit about building in some skills around care coordination. So we're going to highlight our first one today, along with having some time for brainstorming, any cases you want to bring up. And then the bulk of our meeting will be the learning session, and we'll wrap up at 9:30. So if you haven't done so already, we would love to have you rename your Zoom profile. So if you hover over your picture in the top right-hand corner, you'll see three little dots, and if you click on those dots, you get a drop-down list that gives you an option to rename. If you can include your role in your agency, that really helps us take attendance as long as well as re giving us your full name. If you are joining us for the first time, in addition, we'd love to have you include your email in the chat. That helps us add you to our listserv, and you'll get announcements about future meetings as well. So, all right. So, announcements. I actually don't have any announcements today, so I'm going to pause here and see if anyone else in the group has any announcements you'd like to share with the group.
I do have something. This is Jade from Health Plans at University Health Plans. I bet you all have already worked with the Utah Kids Foundation. I've heard great things about it over all this time, but the other day I had someone who needed something that insurance just does not cover. And I contacted them and they were like, oh, yeah, we can get it to them even though we have to mail it. And they said that they have an abundance of donations recently that if you have someone who needs a child who needs a supply of some kind. Even she's like, even if it's a weird request and it's not really a normal thing to need or to ask for, call us because we just might have had it donated.
It's great. Thanks, Jade. We love hearing about, being reminded about, or hearing for the first time about resources that are available in the community. And I'll include a link to their website in the resources that go out. Anyone else have any other announcements you want to share? This is actually going to bleed into our brainstorming as well. So in addition to announcements, does anybody have any cases you want to bring up? Resource highlights, updates, ideas you'd like to share with the group as well? This is your time, so I would love to have anybody jump on who wants to. You can either raise your hand, put something in the chat, or just unmute yourself. Eric.
Yeah, sorry. It always takes me a minute to figure out where the raise your hand thing is on here. I just wanted to let everybody know that next week we will be having on Tuesday, we'll be meeting with our federal folks to review our oh fiscal 26 federal fiscal 26 block grant submission. And it's a review of fiscal 24, but for the progress and everything that we did during fiscal 24, and then a review of our state plan for fiscal 26. And as many of you are aware, we did a pretty thorough needs assessment across the state for maternal child health, adolescents, children, and children with special health care needs. So that will all be incorporated into that block grant review. And it's an exciting day-long event. Our federal reviewers are in Denver with our federal team there, and we'll be meeting just from various places via just Google Meet. But we will share those results of the block grant review with you at a later date. Anyway, that is happening here very shortly. So just wanted to make you aware of that.
Great. Thanks, Eric. I see a hand, it looks like from Ashley Jensen.
Hi guys, so I'm Ashley and I'm a therapist from Butterfield Counseling and Neurofeedback. And we just wanted to put out there with kind of options around ABA therapy and stuff, that we've had a lot of success with neurofeedback, for kids with sensory processing, emotional regulation, flexible thinking, and then sometimes those social skills and things as well. And if you aren't familiar with neurofeedback, it's just like we put a cap on their head and we track brain waves, and then during the session kids watch a show and the screen dims or brightens based on when the brain is showing healthy patterns that we want it to. And so we'll put our info down in the chat for you guys to reach out if you want to send any referrals or assessments or anything our way. But we just have seen a lot of success, especially with that sensory processing and emotional regulation with kids.
Great. Thanks, Ashley. Go ahead, Eric. Oh,
Sorry, Ashley, question for you. We know that with like ABA therapy, insurances, cover that and all of the rest of it. With the neurofeedback, how is that covered in conjunction with ABA therapy? Are there special procedures that need to happen from maybe a primary care provider perspective for making referrals or that type of service, to kind of ease that process?
So we actually are able to charge it like a therapy session. So it would be the person's normal copay for a mental health therapy. Everyone who does the neurofeedback is a licensed mental health professional. And so they don't need a referral from a primary care provider or anything like that.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Great. I'm just checking the chat to see if there's any other comments or anything anybody wanted to address. I don't see any other hands, so I'm going to move on to our quick skills building. So today we're going to talk a little bit about active listening because on the short survey we did last week, not last week, last month, one of the top areas that people felt like they could have their skills developed in as a care coordinator were around communication and coaching. And so I thought it would be great to start with active listening. And we'll try to revisit these because I mean, I think active listening along with a lot of these skills are things that just require a lot of practice and revisiting over time. So it'll be a quick introduction today, and then we'll try to revisit it in the future as well. So what is active listening? It means listening, fully focusing, understanding, and responding thoughtfully to someone, which at its core sounds fairly easy, but as we all know, is actually very hard to do. Why is it important? It helps build trust. It encourages honest sharing, and it increases understanding. So some of the key skills for active listening include being present, thinking about pausing what you're doing, putting away, pausing typing or charting, making sure your phone is away, making eye contact, using open, relaxed body languages that encourage somebody to share with you. Another piece is using reflective responses. So taking the time to paraphrase what was said in your own words, or acknowledge feelings that you're hearing as well. It also includes pausing, giving time and space for things to not be said, and taking that time to maybe notice body language cues, nonverbal feedback that you're getting, and then, of course, listening without interrupting or trying to jump in and finish sentences or fill the space. And last but not least, is clarifying and summarizing. So using open-ended questions to clarify phrases like, help me understand this better, or can you explain this piece more to me? And then statements like, let me make sure I understood you correctly. And then again, and none of these happen in specific orders. You may circle around to them multiple times in a conversation where you're reflecting and clarifying and pausing and practicing being present. So I wanted to give us just a little quick practice today around our topic for today, which is therapy modalities outside of ABA. So imagine for a second that you're in a visit with a parent and they say something like this: we've been doing ABA for months and I'm not seeing any real improvement. It's exhausting and I'm starting to wonder if it's even worth it. So I want you to think for just a second, how could you respond to this? What are some ways you could think about some of those skills of active listening to respond to a parent's concern like this? Again, you can either just unmute yourself, drop them in the chat, raise your hand. Anybody have any ideas? Think about the technique of reflecting first. What's a way you could reflect back what you're hearing?
Am I okay to just jump in? And
Yeah,
I'm
just jump in,
terrible.
Eric.
I'm terrible at finishing other people's sentences. So when I read that one, I kind of cringed. But on this, I think, just to say back, it sounds like you're really tired with, that you're really exhausted with kind of what's happening now. Can we talk about that just a little bit more? And maybe that would open it up to say, talk about the routine or what's going on, or maybe exactly what is frustrating them or getting them, kind of exacerbated with the whole situation.
Yeah, exactly. I see a few other comments people have put in the chat for statements like, it sounds like you're frustrated with the lack of progress so far. So that's a great reflecting statement. And then that's a really great question and such a valid concern. Uh, Abby put in the notes as well. So things you could say are very similar to that. Like it sounds like you're not seeing the progress you were expecting. That I imagine that's really frustrating for you. So that's a great example of reflecting and validating their feelings. And then I think I'd clarify here too. I think I'd say something like, what kind of progress were you anticipating? Or help me understand better what kind of progress you were hoping to see. And that could open up a whole conversation about expectations around therapy, but also maybe just uh, lead to further things that need to be explored. So again, just a quick practice for today. I'm not going to dwell on it too much. We'll come back to it at another time, but I do have a challenge for you today. So I want you to just try this once today at some encounter when somebody's talking to you. I want you to stop what you're doing, look at the speaker fully, listen without planning your response. This is a very hard piece for us to do. And then reflect what you've heard with a brief summary or validation. And I think even just 30 seconds of active listening can make a difference. And as with all skills, the more we practice, the better we get at it. So that's our quick skills for today. And now we're going to move into our learning session for today. As I mentioned already, our topic today is around therapy modalities beyond ABA, and we have our presenter, Lauren Annen, who's an occupational therapist, joining us. And I'm going to give you a quick bio on her. So Lauren's a board-certified occupational therapist that has been specializing in pediatrics for over 8 years. She's certified in the Ayers Sensory Integration through University of Southern California and has her advanced certification in DIR floor time through the International Council for Development and Learning. She strives to support neurodiversity in her daily practice by empowering children to advocate for their sensory needs and teaching caregivers to understand the complexity of sensory processing, integration, and regulation. Lauren is passionate about including play in all of her sessions and strives to build meaningful connections with each family she works with. So we're super excited to have Lauren with us today, and I am going to go ahead and turn the time over to her.
Hi. Let me pull up my presentation. Thank you for introducing me. My name is Lauren Annen. I am an occupational therapist, and I work for the Department of Healthy and Healthy Families, and I'm part of the integrated service providers. I work per diem for them. Let me just get this formatted. It's been a long while since I've given a virtual presentation. And that's not to share. So hold on one second while I get my technology going. Sorry for that. So I have been an OT since 2017. I'm certified in air sensory integration, and I have my advanced certification in DIR floor time, which I'll be talking about today as well. I wanted to talk about my own sensory preferences since we'll be diving into that. I have auditory sensitivities as well as tactile, so like the way clothing feel on my skin and food. I also love deep pressure, like big hugs, working out and exercising really help me to stay regulated. So I love to have conversations during presentations. So since we've talked about active listening, I would like anyone who would like to participate to feel free to either raise their hand or use the chat function so that I'm going to be asking lots of questions. So the first one is, what is occupational therapy? Yeah, go ahead. I see that someone raised their hand. Feel free to jump in.
Yes, hi, I'm Ilse. So what I've learned about occupational therapy is that it's a therapy that helps so-called with doing your occupation. And so for basically it's just life skills. So the ability to be able to do that, be regulated enough to do that. But the modality is like the focus is mostly on sensory integration, is what I've understood from what you do in occupational therapy.
Yeah, so I do a lot of sensory integration, and you're right, it is someone's occupations, which you nailed it. They're activities of daily living, but they're actually anything that can occupy one's time. And so in pediatrics, this looks like their main job is playing, going to school, education, activities of daily living, as you said, Ilsa. So getting dressed, feeding themselves, toileting, taking a shower or a bath. Those are all really important occupations. And as they get older, health management, work, leisure, and social participation are also considered one's occupations. So I already alluded to this. So what are our jobs of our children? Playing would be the main focus, education, and then participating in their lives at home. So OT can support children through transitions. If we think about how many transitions we go through in our daily life, that could be as simple as getting out of bed first thing in the morning. That's a transition. That could be the transition of getting in the car to go to school. That could be the transition of going from a caregiver to another caregiver. So like from mom's caregiving to dad's caregiving or to school. Play skills are another one. So turn taking, social engagement, imaginary play, playing board games, playing as an adult also is an occupation. Flexibility. So this is that frustration tolerance of how do I tolerate something not going my way? Can I be flexible when a routine changes? Or when another caregiver does bedtime or bath time, and I'm used to maybe mom as the primary caregiver providing that engagement in the occupation. A large part of what I'm passionate about is parent education and really helping parents to understand what is happening in their little humans' bodies that explain the observable behavior that we're seeing. And so kids don't come with manuals. And sometimes it feels like rocket science to figure out what is causing something to be happening. And as a parent myself, I go, did they get enough food today? Did they get this need met? Was their nap long enough? And little humans come with so many different challenges and there's no manual. So helping parents to figure out, what components are impacting a child's day through education, as well as parent coaching. So really helping families to understand what is happening and the why behind it, as well as coaching them through what possible strategies they could use to support their child's participation in the future. And then the last one is habits and routines. I think a lot of people don't recognize that OTs really focus on habits and routines of daily function in order to support engagement and participation. I think as adults, something we can all relate to is the burnout that we feel at the end of the day after having a long day of work, and maybe childcare or providing care to a loved one or an adult, or just things not going your way. We all tend to feel maybe burnt out at the end of the day, and imagine how that might feel in a little human's body when most of their day is totally out of their control. And so figuring out tools and strategies to support those routines and engagement can really be supportive for families. So I am not an ABA therapist. I wouldn't consider myself a behavior therapist, but because the conversation today is about modalities other than ABA, I thought it was important for us to all be on the same page about what ABA is according to Autism Speaks. So it's a therapy based on the science of learning and behavior. And ABA helps to understand how behavior works, how it impacts their daily function, and how learning takes place. ABA therapy applies to our understanding of how behaviors occur in real situations, and the goal is to increase behaviors that are helpful and decrease behaviors that are considered harmful. ABA therapy accounts for what they call in behavior theory is the ABCs of behavior. So that would be the antecedent, behavior, and the consequence. So the antecedent is what happens before the observable behavior. The behavior is the person's response or lack of response. So this is the observable thing that we're typically referring to. And then the consequence is what happens after the behavior occurs. So it can either be the positive reinforcement of a behavior or the negative reinforcement. So a simple example of this would be I studied really hard for my math test would be the antecedent, what came first. The observable behavior would be I got an A on the math test, and the consequence would be I'm going to study hard for my next math test or a test in another subject. Would anyone like to take a stab, maybe in the chat, about an ABC of behavior that they've just give another example? Jade, that is a great example. So I didn't sleep enough. I struggled to stay alert and do my best work. And so the consequence is that I'm going to prioritize getting to bed on time the next time. An example I often find families like sharing with me is I go to Costco and so that would be like the antecedent. The behavior is my child gets upset because we're not getting ice cream this time and or they start screaming. And so the consequence could either be a positive reinforcement of getting ice cream or well, that would be a negative reinforcement because that one becomes double negative. Or a positive reinforcement might be, I hear you, you really wanted ice cream today. You were really looking forward to that. So that's one. Sometimes behavior and the positive reinforcement and the negative reinforcement get challenging to navigate. And frequently I've found that parents have a hard time navigating how to manage behaviors. So I think it's important to highlight the similarities between ABA and OT. There is frequently overlap. So in OT, we're typically looking for the root cause of the observable behavior. We are seeking engagement and shared attention. We help to develop problem-solving skills and play skills. As we've talked about so far, activities of daily living are typically the primary reason for a referral for OT, or what people generally think of as OT support. Motor planning and coordination. So motor planning is one's ability to create a new motor plan in their brain and problem solve it effectively. So that would be like learning to play on a new playground piece of equipment and navigating that. Motor planning could also be, how do I navigate a social experience with a peer for the first time, like disagreeing? Fine motor skills, including handwriting, buttoning, zippers, tying shoes. And OTs do use an understanding of behavior to support engagement and participation. So I find myself frequently explaining to parents the ABCs of behavior and looking at what the antecedent and the consequences of the observable behavior, just like ABA would. ABA therapy or therapists complete an FBA, so a functional behavior analysis for the cause of behavior. They focus on communication and language, social skills, self-care. So under self-care, this is typically where those activities of daily living would come in. Motor skills, this should say academic skills, I apologize. And they also are using behavior principles. Any questions about the overlap between ABA and OT?
Lauren, can I ask you a question? Do you find that you have families that you work with who are receiving ABA therapy and also benefit from OT?
Yes. I have found that the majority of families that I've worked with in my total experience as an OT, most families are receiving therapy simultaneously. That could be OT, speech therapy, physical therapy, mental health services, in addition to ABA therapy. So it's not typically either or. And typically from my experience, there's lots of collaboration and hopefully, right, between what ABA is addressing and the strategies that we are working on in our OT sessions. That's a great question. Thank you, Eric. Any other questions between how OT and ABA overlap or have similarities or differences? Okay, now we're going to move on to what makes OT special and what makes OT different. Because I think that sometimes we forget about how, at least in my experience, people don't always think about OT in this lens. Or typically they're like, well, the child can tie their shoes, or the child can get dressed, or the child can brush their teeth. So why do they need OT? So occupational therapists would look at a problem by looking at the person, environment, task performance, context, motivation, and collaboration. So when we're thinking about the person, we're thinking about the individual and their individual client factors. So this is things like range of motion, sensory needs, their disability and abilities, their strengths, and their medical history. The environment is the situation in which the activity or the occupation engages in. So sometimes what happens is that the child is able to do the skill and be regulated in one environment, like their home, but not at school, or sometimes vice versa, where they're having no challenges at school, but at home, when we get home from the afternoon or that morning routine, we're seeing lots of behaviors and challenges occurring. Task performance. So this would be breaking down every single step to in order to participate in that given occupation, and what do they need to do to engage in the activity. So yesterday I was having the conversation with somebody, and they were supporting a student with toileting, and I was providing them support and strategies and problem solving of why this particular child was having a hard time with toileting. And I asked them to write down every single step in toileting and every single verbal cue that they were giving this child to support their toileting. And she got 13 steps. And then that's just like one step at a time. And then had to break down the steps if something had happened. So if the pull-up was wet, then she broke the steps down into 5 different steps if that was happening. And so when we think about an activity that seems easy, like toileting, it's actually not. And that was not including the bodily functions of urinating or defecating. That was just the entire transition and every step that goes within the occupation of toileting. And then the context. So this is the social, cultural, and personal factors that may impact the given occupation. So this could be, in some cultures, it's typical for parents to feed their child until they're 5 or 6 years old at the table, and they're spoon feeding them. Where in other cultures, there's a preference for independence and building the skill immediately. And so that might be someone feels very differently about spoon feeding their child than in other cultures. And then the motivation. So why is the family or the child wanting to participate, improve the function, or engage in a behavior modification to support their engagement in the activity? So this frequently looks like using motivational interviewing strategies to figure out really what is, so why does this family want change, or why do we want this behavior to change or this activity to change? And then collaboration. So in a typical OT evaluation, and in my practice, this looks like collaboration with parents and partnering with them to participate in their family and social system to establish goals. And so I frequently like to tell parents that I am the air traffic control person. I'm sitting in the tower, really high up, really far away, and I'm giving tools and strategies. And it's up to the family to decide what's going to be the best fit for their individual family system. And I hope to empower families to make a choice that supports them. And using and really understanding the why behind the change can be really helpful for families. And also understanding that every family system is different, and what their needs are for 1 week or 1 day or one transition might be different from that individual, a transition into the next one. Thank you, Abby. I love giving this analogy too, because I think it's really important for parents to understand in OT that they are an active participant in their child's success. And, you know, thinking back to Athena's question about the active listening and engagement and what the expectations are and what a family was hoping to gain from therapy, I think having these conversations at the start of therapy can be really helpful in empowering families to feel like they have a voice and they get to participate in what we're working on and addressing. Oh, sorry, I jumped ahead. OTs often use this pyramid of learning. And so I love this as a visual for adults to understand what's happening in some of these little bodies and what might be impacting something like an academic learning skill. So if you see at the top of the pyramid, that's learning. That is learning math. But if we look at the foundation of the pyramid, that is their regulation, their central nervous system. Are they in fight, flight, freeze? Are they engaged? Do they have a sense? So now we're into the blue part of the pyramid. Do they have a sensory impairment or dysfunction that's impacting their participation? Do they have the postural control and postural security to sit in that chair for the entirety of the math lesson or the circle time on the rug? Do they have the motor planning skills to put on their shoes and socks in the morning in order to get out the door on time? Are they able to coordinate how their eyes look at the whiteboard and then look down at their paper in order to copy a chemistry lesson? And are they able to participate independently in their activities of daily living, or is there behavior or other thing that's impacting their participation? So I love this pyramid, and I love to show people this pyramid because often what we're talking about in terms of a concern is the tippity top of the pyramid. And so it's my job as the occupational therapist to start to look at the pyramid and figure out where the problem lies and what tools and strategies or skill development can I look at in order to support their participation and engagement in what we're looking at. Does anyone have questions about the pyramid? We're going to be talking about this today. All right, moving on. So what is sensory registration, processing, and integration? Can anyone name the senses? Feel free to put them in the chat. I'm going to be mindful of time, so I'm just going to skip ahead. So we have vision, touch, smell, taste, and hearing. So these are your typical senses that we're learning about in elementary school. But we also have 3 internal senses. So that's proprioception. So this is where our body is in space based off our muscles and our joints. And we're sending information from our central nervous system and our peripheral nervous system back and forth to better understand where we are. So if everyone can close your eyes. And now you're going to move your left arm to the left 2 inches. And then you're going to touch your nose and lift your left leg. And you can open your eyes now. But the only way you're able to do that is by knowing where your body is in space based off that information that you're getting from your bodies. And maybe you weren't able to do that, and in which case we might have some challenges with body awareness, motor planning, coordination, postural control, in which case we would want to explore why that didn't happen. Vestibular input is based off information about where your head position is in space, and there are 3 semicircular canals in your ear that all have fluid in them, and as the fluid moves, it sends information back to our nervous system. So examples of this would be spinning, tilting your head, car sickness, and vertigo. Interoception is typically the sense that most people have never heard of. And so this is where our state of our body is. So pain, bladder fullness, stomach fullness, and headaches would all be information from our interoception system. So this is the nerve fibers that go to those muscles in our skin in order to tell us what is actually happening in our body. So if everyone could close your eyes and tune into your body, can you feel the dryness of your lips? How full is your bladder this morning from your coffee or your Diet Coke or the water that you drink? Is your stomach full from breakfast, empty, or is it time for a 9 o'clock snack? Check in with your heart rate. Is it moving fast, slow, or just right? And go ahead and open your eyes. So all of that information is our ability to, one, get the information, process the information, and then decide what do we need to do with that information to make a meaningful response. So who's ever taken a bite of food and immediately needed to spit it out because it was too soft, too smelly, too crunchy, too wet? It was just not right. It's happened to me before. Who's had to change out of clothing because it was just too tight, too itchy, and just didn't feel right? Happens fairly regularly. Who's ever walked into a messy room, a busy party, a loud restaurant, and thought, nope, this is not going to happen today. I'm going for food to go. It definitely happens. So again, coming back to the learning pyramid, any of those challenges would impact our participation and our engagement in something like academic skills or a transition. And so I think it's really important, and a crucial part of the OT lens is looking at sensory processing and how it impacts our function. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I want to be mindful of everybody's time and keep moving along. So I've alluded to this word regulation, and what does it mean? So regulation develops through trusting relationships with the child's primary caregiver. That would be caregivers, teachers, therapists, babysitters. And it develops through an attentive presence and consistent response and quality relationships. And so a child's relationship quality impacts their attachment and their attachment style, which is either going to support or hinder their regulation and therefore impact their participation. And this is an important consideration that I would say most OTs would also consider, and that's what makes OT special. And so regulation looks at not only sensory regulation, but emotional regulation. It's how to adjust, manage, or control something so that it works. And so this could be the state of alertness, energy level, emotional regulation. And we need all of these things to meet the demands of our environment, situation, and support our overall well-being. If you have a question, please feel free to put it in the chat. Okay, switching a little bit of subjects, I'm going to talk about floor time. Oh, there is a question in the chat. Yes, my slides will be available. Athena has them to share. It's a great question. So what is DIR floor time? So DIR stands for the developmental theory created by Dr. Greenspan and Serena Ryder, who was a PhD in psychology. And so DIR is the theory, and floor time is the application of the therapy through therapeutic modalities. And so people that are trained in floor time would be OTs, speech therapists, physical therapists, mental health providers, etc. And so what is DIR theory? So it is the developmental individual relationship model. And so it looks at the development of a person's current skills, so these would be like the fine motor skills, communication skills, cognition, and motor coordination. The individual, and so this is the individual factors that make that person who they are and how they engage in the world. So these are their sensory preferences, engagement, and areas of interest, and the relationship. And so what I love about floor time is that it accounts for the how people engage with other people. And so typically this is using emotional affect would be one of the tools and strategies in floor time to build skills together. And so floor time is really important in the doing it together component, which is the relationship. So reasons why I love floor time is that it's child-centered. It focuses on building the relationship between not only me, the therapist, and the child, but also the parent and the child, because it does not matter if I'm the only one who has the skills to do or to support their engagement. And this comes back again to that parent coaching and parent education model. It's really important that parents also have the tools, strategies. This could be teachers or caregivers or babysitters, right? It doesn't matter if I'm the only one that can do it. What matters is that others in this child life can build these skills to support them at home or school in the other environment. It accounts for the child's current level of skills while considering their individual differences. So this might mean that maybe a child has some splinter skills and maybe they are really advanced in one skill area. But if we look at the whole pyramid, there's a breakdown in some other skill. And so DIR floor time looks at supporting the skill acquisition while being respectful to the child's like highest level too. It is considered to be a neuro-affirming intervention. And so one of the reasons why I love DIR floor time is one of the organizations that I use, ICDL, they employ autistic adults to participate, engage, and support the application of floor time to support neurodiversity and to ensure it's neuro-affirming as a theory and an intervention, because I want to make sure that I don't identify as being autistic, but I would like to be neuro-affirming in my care. So I like to listen to the autistic adult community and really support their lived experiences of ensuring that the therapy that I'm using and the strategies I'm using are not considered to be traumatic. And if they are, I would like to fix that and to improve my skills. It's also research-based and it accounts for one, sensory processing. And the foundation is engagement and regulation. So DIR also uses the learning pyramid and really focuses on the foundation of learning of regulation and engagement. In floor time theory, there's a ladder, so to speak, of skill development. And as part of the theory, the foundation is regulation. And from regulation, we can build engagement and two-way communication and these higher level cognitive skills based off, again, trusting relationships, co-regulation, and regulation. So if you would like to explore DIR providers in your area, or maybe you have a family that comes to you and says, you know, ABA is not working, or I have concerns with using ABA because of these reasons, I would like to have other supports. You could look on this website and find other DIR floor time providers in your area, or you could also reach out to me and I can help you. So in my current role for integrative service providers, I consult with families to support and provide coaching. I also help in problem solving and finding other providers to support their needs if I'm not able to do that, or if they need something more intensive than the consultative model that I currently use. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, maybe more a comment, but so I've been, a passionate supporter of interventions like DIR Floor Time and the Play Project. And the problem has always been the financial aspect, because I've known people that were trained in Play Project offering it through early intervention, but parents, and even though it's technically less expensive because you go through the parents, who then implement these strategies. If it's not covered by insurance, this is a big barrier for a lot of people. So I'm hoping, I know in California they're changing what is covered, and so I'm hoping that will also happen here. But do you have any comments on that?
No, I think that is one of the biggest struggles. New Jersey also has DIR floor time covered through their version of Medicaid. and Medicare, which I think is lovely. And it would be great for Utah to also do that. So one of the other ways that a family could get DIR floor time support in maybe a different way would be finding a provider on the list who takes insurance through their healthcare clinic, and then getting like the OT, PT, or speech therapy through their insurance through one of the providers. And that provider would be potentially using a floor time modality and support within their sessions. So I've had some families who have success going that way, where maybe it's a less traditional model and it's not quite the intensive model of ABA, where families are frequently getting 20 to 40 hours of direct therapy a week, but it's just another way to get access to therapy. Okay. I see Abby's question. Do you have any tips on how to tell if a nonverbal child is having sensory issues and how to tell what sensory areas are affected? Yes. So as I talked about, like the ABCs of behavior, sensory challenges would also be an observable behavior. Frequently, I'm having conversations with families of, is it sensory or is it behavior? And sometimes or usually it's both, right? So if an environment, if the behavior is a child is eloping, I want to look at the environment. Is it too loud? Is it too noisy? Is it too busy? What was the task demand of the child that's causing them to feel dysregulated and elope? So what is happening from a sensory perspective to inform the behavior would be the lens that I would take to look at it. There are also parent and caregiver questionnaires like the sensory profile and the sensory processing measure that allow us to have a parent respond based on what behaviors they're observing in their daily life. And that can give some standardized measures and observable outcomes based off what a parent has seen, and those are scoreable. Does that answer your question, Abby?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I think at the end of that is my time for today. If anyone has any more questions, though, feel free to reach out to me via email. This is my email address.
Thank you, Lauren. We do actually have a few more minutes before we wrap up. If anybody else has any final questions, I will send out the slides with our resources of the month email that will likely go out later today. So if you're not getting those, it means you're not on our listserv, and I need your name and your email to add you to that. So if you want to drop that in the chat, that would be great. Let's see, I don't see any other questions coming in through the chat or hands raised. So I'll just give a reminder for our next meeting. We always meet the third Wednesday of each month from 8:30 to 9:30 on Zoom. So our next one will be October 15th. It's going to be about teen pregnancy, and we'll be hearing a little bit more specifics about teen pregnancy in general, and then specifically about services offered through the University Mother, Teen, and Child program. And Eric, you have your hand raised, so go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you to Lauren because I learned so much today. But secondly, if you find our UCCN sessions valuable and helpful, spread the word. We want more of our, care coordinators, and that takes a variety of roles. That could be community health workers, that could be, MAs possibly working in some clinics that might have various roles, so not care coordinator specific. Even our practice managers or other folks who might find this, these types of discussions valuable. So we say spread the word, share it with other people who who could benefit. And Athena is amazing at getting folks added to our listserv and to the invite for these monthly sessions.
All right. I don't see anyone else with hands raised or anything like that. So I'll just close out with a reminder that you can stay connected through our listserv each month as well. If you have a case that comes up in the middle of the month, you're searching for a specific resource. If you email this UCCCN meetings at list email address, it will go to the entire listserv, and people are really great about responding and getting information back as quick as possible. And we also have our Facebook group as well, which will be linked in the email that I send out. So thanks everyone for joining us, and we will plan to see you all in October. It's already September. Thanks everyone.